Have you ever imagined if one day someone very close to you suddenly disappeared? And after that, your life took a terrifying turn? Has it ever happened that someone cried out, asking you for help, but when you turned around, no one was there? Today's story is about a girl named Carla, whose life changed in a single night when she felt something around her that was impossible to explain in words. This story takes place in 1980. Back then, there was an old mansion in a small village in America, and the villagers believed it was haunted. No one dared to go near the place because people said that strange sounds came from there at night, sometimes crying, sometimes screaming, and sometimes the sound of someone walking. The villagers believed something bad had happened there, and the walls of the mansion still carried that negative energy. This mansion belonged to Parker Wilson, and Carla got married into this family. Carla's life was going well until one day her father suddenly disappeared. Her mother had died long ago, and her father was the only family she had left. But one day, he vanished without saying a word. Carla searched everywhere for her father, but he was nowhere to be found. She was left alone and didn't know what to do. While the rest of her family had accepted that her father was gone for good, Carla refused to believe it. Every night, she would wait for him to return. Months passed without any sign of her father, and Carla's uncle and aunt decided to marry her off to Parker Wilson's eldest son, Jack. They thought that marriage would help Carla return to a normal life and heal from her grief. Jack was a kind man who supported Carla through her difficult times. Slowly, Carla began to adjust to her new life. Jack loved her deeply and took care of her. Carla also had a good relationship with her brother-in-law, Rocky. He was always ready to help her, and Carla started to see him as an elder brother. Both Jack and Rocky did their best to make Carla happy, but deep down, she still felt an emptiness that troubled her constantly. She often thought of her father and felt like her life was incomplete without him. Everything seemed normal until one night, something happened that turned Carla's world upside down. She was sleeping in her room when she suddenly heard the sound of someone crying. The voice was so filled with pain that it woke her up. She thought maybe Jack had gotten up and left the room, but when she looked over, she saw that Jack was still sleeping beside her. There was no one else in the room. Carla thought it was just her imagination and tried to go back to sleep. But then, she heard the same crying again. This time she was even more scared. It felt like the voice was her father's, calling out to her. She was terrified, but she didn't tell anyone about it. She convinced herself that it was just the stress getting to her. Over the next few days, Carla began to hear the crying more and more often, both day and night. It felt like someone was always nearby, crying and asking for help. She became completely disturbed. Eventually, she told Jack and Rocky about it. They tried to calm her down, saying it was all in her head and that she was probably just missing her father too much, which was making her hear things. But Carla knew this wasn't just her imagination. She could feel that something was seriously wrong. She started to suspect that it might be her father's spirit, calling out to her for help. As time passed, Carla's health began to deteriorate. She became angry all the time and would get irritated over small things. If anyone said anything to her, she would threaten to kill them. Her family couldn't understand what was happening to her. They assumed that the grief of losing her father was affecting her mind. Carla's appearance also started to change. Dark circles appeared under her eyes, and her skin became pale. She began to act like a completely different person, almost like she had gone mad. Her family was terrified of her. At night, she would do strange things, like suddenly get up and sit in the corner of the room, laughing loudly while facing the wall. One day, Carla found herself in an old room in the mansion that had always been locked and off-limits to everyone. She didn't know how she had ended up in that room, but as soon as she stepped inside, she felt an overwhelming sense of unease. The room was dark, and there was a black statue in the center. As soon as Carla touched the statue, she felt like something was choking her, as if her soul was being squeezed. Panicking, she let go of the statue, but then she felt something heavy near her feet. When she looked down, she saw a human skull. Carla screamed in terror. She looked around and saw that the room was filled with human bones scattered everywhere, and the entire floor was covered in blood. She also found a note that said, "This statue is cursed. Whoever touches it will have their soul bound by this curse."
But Carla's story was not end yet. If you want to watch second part, let me know in the comment how many of you are interested. And if you want to know how a man survived 100 days in an ocean, then watch this video and know